Good morning, all of you. I welcome you all to Answer Kari. So today we'll discuss the important articles from 3rd of January's newspaper. So the first important article is regarding the demonetization process. So in the Supreme Court's ruling, it finds no flaw in the 2016 demonetization process. However, there is one judge who disagrees with the majority judgment, and she says that a union government's notification issued under Section 26 subclause 2 of the RBI Act was unlawful. Now we'll see what is this section all about. So the statutory procedure under this Section 26 subclause 2 was not violated merely because the center had taken the initiative to advise the central board to consider recommending demonetization. So this is the majority judgment. And in 2016, the government had initiated the demonetization, not the central board. So this is what the dissenting judge has to say, that basically under this section 26, it is the central board of RBI who takes the decision and who can initiate this process of demonetization. But here the government used this section to go ahead with their decision of demonetization, and it was the government who had initiated this process and not the central board. So that is what the dissenting judge has to say. And in cases in which the government initiates demonetization, it should take the opinion of the central board also. Then if the board's opinion was in, even if it was negative, the center could still go forward with the demonetization exercise, but through another route, that would have been by promulgating an ordinance or by enacting a parliamentary legislation. So this is what is, we can say, the judgment all about. And talking about RBI, so RBI had seen note ban as an opportunity. So documents that were placed on record by the government before the Supreme Court to conclude that the Central Board of RBI was very much in the loop before recommending demonetization. So it is not that the decision was absolutely or completely taken by the government. The Central Board was there also in the loop, and it was there in discussions. This is what the documents placed before the Supreme Court they suggest. And the Central Board had found the proposal as an opportunity to further financial inclusion. So this is, we can say, what was the view of the Central Board of RBI. Then talking about again a dispute between, we can say, territory dispute between two states of Andhra Pradesh and Odisha. So here the site of dispute is the Koraput district. So you should be knowing that which all states they are having, we can say, the boundary disputes. Then Karnataka High Court says that we should be using gender neutral words, and specifically this has been said in context of referring the ex servicemen. So here we see that the word men has been used. So we need to use gender neutral words because it is pointed out that women have a role to play in the forces, be it army, navy, or the air force. So that there is an imperative need for the union and all the state governments to change the nomenclature of ex-servicemen to ex-service personnel to make it gender neutral in tune with ever evolving dynamic tenets of the fundamental right to equality before law guaranteed under the Constitution. And there has to be a change in the mindset of the rule-making authority or the policymakers. It is only then there could be recognition of the commitment of the values of the Constitution. So we need change in the behavior, in the mindset of, we can say, the policymakers if we want to really see the change happening at the ground level. And in this picture, you can see that the picture shows the Sri Ranganath Swami temple, which is a 400 years old temple located in Hyderabad, that is in the state of Telangana. Now talking about the Wall of Peace mural. So it has been thrown open to public in the state of Kerala. So the Wall of Peace, you can see in this picture, you can see that these embossings, they are basically the word peace has been written in 250 world languages in this mural, piece of mural. And It is a 700-foot long compound wall, which is a work of modern mural art. And it sets the record of the world's record for the largest public art project in Eurasia. And as I said, that word peace has been embossed on this wall of peace in 250 world languages. And the wall has also been a tribute to the Cherpulassery, local heroes of the freedom struggle. So Cherpulassery, it is there in the Palakkad district in the state of Kerala. Then coming to the editorial page. So this article is emphasizing upon the losing worth of the degrees that we are running behind, because obviously we have a mindset that then the more number of degrees we have, the more satisfied we are. So that is the general phenomenon that is there. So there's a widely prevalent phenomenon, namely the urge to gather more and more number of degrees. And this is the article is emphasizing upon the devaluation of the qualifications. And so we see that the certificates, diplomas, and degrees, they are in great demand in what is literally an educational bazaar these days. And higher education now, where a vast and varied market of qualifications has grown since the mid 1990s. So we are obviously this thing is also relevant when we talk to the higher education, talk about the higher education sphere. And a young candidate enrolled in one course wants to enroll in other courses also, and permission for dual degree admission. This has further boosted this urge to get more number of certificates, diplomas, and degrees. So the driving force of this urge, it is located both within and outside the system of our education. So internally, the system, it encourages the students to gather additional qualifications by defining course content and its aims narrowly. So this is one factor why we are running behind getting more and more number of degrees, getting ourselves enrolled in more number of institution. Like we when we are completing one degree, or when we are completing a one course, we try to get before we try to get ourselves enrolled in another course before we are completing the one that we are right now pursuing. So this is known as a specialization. So this phenomenon is a response to the mystification of the skills as distinct from the knowledge. So this is there that there is a mystification that skills are different from knowledge. However, if we have clearly defined, broadly defined aims of, we can say, the courses that we are enrolling in, then we could not have, we can say, not seen this phenomenon of getting the urge to get more and more degrees. So the phrase job ready, it captures the attraction of sliver thin courses that cut the scope of learning so fine that one certificate can only lead the student to search for the next. So we have a urge that are we really job ready or not? Or these days we there is a mindset that merely having a graduation degree is not sufficient, or that does not makes you job ready. So greater driving force is externally located, and that is in the economy. So economic growth, it has not resulted in expansion of satisfying employment in many countries, and in case of India, the scarcity of worthwhile jobs is quite severe in many regions. So this is the external factor which is leading to this phenomenon. And the fear of joblessness, it fuels the urge to gain new eligibilities, because the volatility that exists in the job market, which also implies that no job can last for long. Obviously we need to keep improving and keep polishing our skills. So hence the anxiety to become eligible for as many types of jobs as possible is what drives us towards getting a number of degrees, certificates, and diplomas. Then delinking did not happen, and basically, obviously, the delinking between these two things didn't happen. And talking about the correspondence courses, so now they are called the open learning, so that have proliferated. We see that internet has also enabled the self-learning market. We are seeing coaching markets emerging, so competitive exams, they are now attract countless youth to indulge in what we refer to as the politics of waiting. So that is there, and how things have, we can say, they have changed since 1980s, but the situation continues. And the crisis of standards, so devaluation of degrees is strongly associated with lowering of the standards. It has proved to be correct. And when a course does not give you what you expected to learn from it, you go for a higher level of the same course. So this is, we can say, the fundamental reason behind it. And public institutions of higher education, they have suffered sustained hollowing out over the past 3 decades because of their inability to maintain the standards while being forced to accommodate an increased number of students, that is reflected in the mass exodus to the foreign systems and expensive private institutions. So it is, we can say, because of the failure of the public institutions to maintain their standards, and at the same time they're enrolling higher number of students every year, which has led to a number of students to move out to foreign countries to get higher education and enroll themselves in the expensive private institutions. And the students from the deprived strata, they cannot avail of these options because these are really expensive. So the public institutions, they need to revive, we can say, the value of their courses and the degrees that they are offering to students. So there are, of course, many other ways to explain the fall in the standards of teaching and also in the expected diligence of the students. And digital technology has made its own contribution to this noticeable changes in the student behavior. So one reason is it can be attributed to the digital technology, which has led to change in students' behavior. And there is a considerable gap between the discourse of reform and the reality of our higher educational system. So, no doubt we talk about reforms and implementing them, but there's a lot of difference between those reforms, the suggested reforms, and what prevails in reality. And unwillingness to acknowledge the persistence of older problems, that has become a source of further systemic innovation. And the nature and the choice of reforms, they can certainly be improved by looking at the residues of the past difficulties and at the COVID-19 impact. So this was all about it. And here we're talking about government scheme that is known as the Vibrant Village Program. So here the government of India is paying special attention to the development of the border villages, especially from the security perspective. So, the government announced this Vibrant Village program to promote development and communication in the border villages. And the scheme is for funding development of the border villages, setting up or coming up with new infrastructure, which have sparse population, they have limited connectivity and infrastructure, which often get left out from the development gains. So the existing border area development plan of the Ministry of Housing Affairs, it covers the development of all the border regions. And 1 year after it was announced, so there is a little clarity on the details of the scheme, that is Vibrant Village Program, including on the question of whether it will cover all the border areas or only the northern border with China, as mentioned in the budget. So these are some of the concerns regarding the scheme. And here we'll be talking about the situation in Indian prisons and how we need to tackle this thing. And so basically there's a question. So how are we claiming that we are progressing ahead as a nation if we are still building prisons to address the issue of overcrowding? So, number one, if the number of prisoners is rising and we are coming up with new prisons, that is one thing. And the another aspect is overcrowding of prisons. So, given these two things, how can we claim that we are progressing ahead as a nation? So, this is the question, and that has been raised in this article. So right now we talk about what is the basic idea behind constructing or designing prisons in India. So they are basically we can say there are solitary confinements which will have and which have severe detrimental effect on the prisoner's mental health. And what should be, we can say, the modern prisons infrastructure or design, or how they should be now constructed in this modern world, given we are obviously talking about the impact on mental health of the prisoners. So they should be open and communal space, have fresh air and spaces for family visits and therapy. They should have health and wellness facilities, monasteries, and communal complexes, emphasizing the need to break away from this traditional conception of prisons as mere warehouses and cages, even for the most violent inmates, also. So, that should how an ideal prison should be designed. And prisons in India, they're still governed by the Prisons Act of 1894, which is a colonial legislation and which treats prisoners as subpar citizens, and it provides the legal basis for punishment to be retributive rather than rehabilitative. So these laws are also highly casteist in nature. So some jail manuals they even continue to focus on purity as prescribed by the caste system and assign work in prison based upon the prisoner's caste identity. And in India, Dalits and Adivasis, they are overrepresented in Indian prisons. And this is because the legislations such as the Habitual Offenders Act and the beggary laws, they allow the police to target them for reported crimes. So that is how things are functioning as far as the Indian prisons are concerned. And our president, addressing the Constitutional Day speech celebration, she gave a speech where she highlighted that progress is antithetical to setting up prisons, and we must address this congestion in prisons in non-carceral ways, which is not focusing, we can say, upon the prison, basically. So we should, move away from this mindset and identity that, prisoners or they are like basically we need to cage them at one location, because obviously that highly negatively impacts their mental health. And these could include basically, here we're talking about what steps could be taken in reforming our prisons. So these could include releasing unwell or the old inmates, reducing penalties, allowing bail at affordable costs, employing anti-carceral ways of holding people accountable for their crimes, and expediting trials. So the primary reason why prisons they are overcrowded is because India has not done enough to truly prevent the crimes. So that is the root cause of the problem. Preventing the crime should be the main focus, and our approach to crime should be preventive rather than being reactive. So these are certain reforms which you can mention in your answers. Talking about the cash in circulation, that still it's going strong 6 years after demonetization. And talking about the percentage, so 83% rise in the circulation of currency 6 years after the move to ban 86% of the cash that was in circulation back in 2016. So, talking about the value of currency, as of now, it stands at rupees 32 lakh crores as on December 23rd, 2022, compared to the 17 lakh crore rupees worth of notes they were in circulation in November 4, 2016, when the government announced demonetization. And talking about the delimitation exercise in Assam. So, what is, firstly, you should be clear with the meaning of what is delimitation. So, delimitation, it is the process of redrawing the boundaries of the Lok Sabha and the state assembly constituencies based on the recent census data to ensure that each seat it has an almost equal number of voters. So that is the main idea behind it, and it is ideally carried out every few years after we carry out a census on decadal basis, and that is conducted by an independent delimitation commission formed under the provisions of the Delimitation Commission Act. So delimitation commissions, they are statutory bodies. And why, we can say, why was it put on hold for the state of Assam? So while delimitation exercise it was undertaken across the country between 2002 and 8, and it was not carried out in the state of Assam and other four states after 1976. So after 1976, there is like no delimitation exercise being carried out in Assam and other four states by because of certain reasons. So however, we see that delimitation panels, they were set up thrice, that is during 1952, 62, and 1972, regularly before the exercise was suspended in 1976 in view of the family planning programs in these states. And also we can say that in 2008 also the exercise was opposed because we can say political parties, they only wanted it to be done after updation of the National Register of Citizens so as to weed out the illegal immigrants. So that was another reason. So talking about now what are the point of view of different political parties regarding this exercise, and basically it will be using the data of 2001 census and not the latest that we have is of 2011. So section 8A of the Representations of Peoples Act 1950, cited by the Election Commission of India for initiating delimitation and the use of 2001 census data, have raised hackles because section 8A only allows reorientation and rules out any change in the total number of parliamentary and assembly constituencies. So the main concern is that what is going to be the benefit if there is no possibility of creating we can say more number of constituencies if there is a need. So what is the point if the assembly seats they are not increased? So that is one question, and basing the delimitation on 2001 census would be unjust. Specifically, after the Election Commission of India, it has used 2011 census data for completing the exercise in Jammu and Kashmir. So why not this is being done on the basis of 2011 data as we talk about the state of Assam. So that is, we can say, all about it. Now, this article becomes very important. Again, it is on demonetization, but it has been written by Dr. Manmohan Singh. So his views are definitely important regarding the economy. So he says that the prime minister he declared that more than 85% of the value of money held in notes of rupees 500 and rupees 1000 they were worthless overnight. And there were two primary reasons cited for this decision by our prime minister. One was to check the enemies from across the border who were using fake currency notes, and the other was to break the grip of the corruption and black money. So no doubt these intentions, they're honorable and they deserve to be supported wholeheartedly. But the underlying premise behind this decision of the Prime Minister to render these currencies illegal overnight, that seems to be false notion that all cash is in black money and all black money is in cash. So this is far from reality. So I'll repeat that it was believed that all cash that exists is black money, and all black money it only exists in the form of cash and not any other form, which is obviously not true. So he's saying that why this claim is false or how things are different in reality. So he says that more than 90% of India's workforce, it still earn their wages in cash. And there consist of hundreds of millions of agricultural workers, construction workers, and so on. So while the number of bank branches in rural areas, they have only doubled since 2001, but there are still more than 600 million Indians who live in town or villages with no bank. And cash is the bedrock of the lives of these people. So you can't say that their wages, obviously they are not black money that they're earning, they are earning through their hard work every single day. So and they save their money in cash also. So it is the fundamental duty of a democratically elected government in any sovereign nation to protect the rights and the livelihood of its citizens. And the holders of black money, they have access to various forms of wealth such as land, gold, foreign exchange, etc. So there have been various attempts by many governments in the past decades also to recover this illicit wealth through actions by the Income Tax Department and the Enforcement Directorate and schemes such as voluntary disclosures. So these steps have been taken in past so as to deal with this problem of black money, because obviously it does not exist only in the form of cash. People they convert their black money in the form of land, in the form of gold, foreign exchange. So that is there, and that's why he says that this becomes a second point that there exists different forms of black money. And firstly was that India has almost 90% of the workforce that still depends upon the wages in cash. And evidence from the past attempts, they have shown that a large majority of this unaccounted wealth, it is not stored in the form of cash. And all black money is not cash, only a tiny fraction is there. And only to tackle that tiny fraction, we cannot take the decision of demonetization, that too on overnight basis. So that is the concern that's been highlighted by him, and that's how he says that how the government went wrong in taking this decision. So to make it worse, the government has actually made it easier to generate such unaccounted wealth in the future by the introduction of rupees 2000 note. So that is also one of his point of view, and this present policy measure has neither tackled the stock of black money holistically, nor has it stemmed the flow of it. So that is there. And then another, there is logistical challenge of replacing billions of old currency notes with the new ones in a monument. That is a monumental challenge, we can say, the logistical cost in replacing such a huge amount of currency. And this is also one reason why most nations, they have undertaken such currency swap operations on certain over a certain time period, and not as a sudden overnight operation. So that is also there. This becomes, we can say, the third thing. And the macroeconomic impact of this decision of the government is likely to be hazardous, because at a time when India's trade numbers are at multi-year lows, our industrial production is shrinking, and job creation is anemic, this policy can act as a negative shock to the Indian economy. So its macroeconomic impact is not going to be positive. And it is indeed true that India's cash to GDP ratio is also very high vis-a-vis other countries. So, but this is also an indicator of the Indian economy's dependence on cash. So, given all these things, how can you take a decision of demonetization on overnight basis? And consumer confidence is an important economic variable in a nation's growth prospect. So that was highly impacted because of this exercise. And talking about the unintended consequences, so black money is a menace to our society that we need to eliminate. No doubt, we can say the premises or the reasons behind this decision, they are definitely supported, but in doing so, we have to be mindful of the potential impact on hundreds of millions of other honest citizens who are a part of this democracy. And most policy decisions, they carry the risk of unintended consequences, so it becomes important to deftly balance these risks with the potential benefits of such decisions. And waging a war on black money may sound enticing, but it cannot entail even a single loss of life of an honest Indian. So these were the views of Dr. Manmohan Singh. Then again, talking about from the Supreme Court judgment on demonetization. So the dissenting judge said that the central board had hardly 24 hours to consider this proposal of the center to demonetize the notes, and the objectives of demonetization, they were noble and well intentioned, but the process undertaken was bad. So that is one thing that has been highlighted, and these are the views of the dissenting judge. And also talking about the official records, they show that the central board acted merely on assurances given by the government that embarking on the process of demonetization would result in reducing the banknotes in the economy and a switch over to the digitalization of the economy. So that was also one of the bases, or it is being said that the central board was given the assurance of that this decision will be furthering digitalization in the economy. So the central government is the best judge, since it has all the inputs with regard to fake currency, black money, terror financing, and drug trafficking. And as such, what measure is required to be taken to curb the menaces would be best left to the discretion of the government in consultation with the RBI. So this is the majority opinion, and arguments that demonetization, it violated citizens' right to property by taking away their money, they were without substance, because the right, they have reasonable restrictions. And saying that on whether demonetization met its desired objectives or not, it was best left to the government. So this was the Supreme Court's majority's view. And talking about the manufacturing sector, so it ends 2022 on a high note, and it recorded its sharpest uptick in output in 13 months in December 2022, with new records rising at the fastest pace since Feb 2021. So even PMI reading for December, it stood at 57.8, which rose from 55.7 in November, and a reading of 50 on the PMI, it indicates no change in the business activity levels. And we see that the overall demand was strong and resilient, and producers also enhanced input purchases at a near record pace. So that's how manufacturing sector has ended in 2022. Talking about the online gaming, so the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, it has proposed an amendment to bring online gaming within the ambit of the Information Technology Rules 2021, and it would be requiring all the online games to register with any self-regulatory body approved by the ministry. So this model is similar to the rules in place for the digital news sites and streaming services under the IT rules, and it is not clear if the games recognized in the codes as games of skill, they will continue to be able to operate under this policy. So this is one of the small developments. Now let's see the world page. So we are seeing war and crisis and disruptions happening. So firstly, in the Russia-Ukraine war, Ukraine, it has launched rocket strikes which killed 63 Russian troops. So this, we can say, terrorism takes the form of energy terrorism. So Russia has carried out airstrikes on Ukrainian power and water supplies almost every week since October. So this has been termed as energy terrorism. And then we talk about Israel and Palestine, then we have Israel and Syrian attacks. So we see that this is the second time in less than 7 months that Damascus International Airport, that is in Syria, where the Iranian-backed armed groups and the Lebanese Hezbollah fighters, they are present, and they has been hit by Israel. So that's how we can say economies are being disrupted and because of war. Now we see that IMF MD Georgieva warns that the global economy faces tougher year in 2023. And she says that world's three main economies, that is US, China, and European Union, they are slowing down simultaneously together. And she cautions that the Chinese government's approach to reopening the country's economy will likely impact regional and global growth negatively. So we have Russia-Ukraine war going on, we have inflationary pressures, we have high interest rates that have been engineered by the central banks such as the US Fed, aimed at taming the pressure prices, and also China has scrapped its zero COVID policy and embarked on a chaotic reopening of its economy. So that is going to negatively impact the global growth in 2023. Now let's take up the Financial Express. So in Financial Express, we'll be taking up this article, which is regarding the freight inflation, and this likely supports likely and a possible increase in the rate hike by RBI in February. So the Bloomberg economists, the truck freight index surged in December. So this suggests upside pressure on core inflation that will persist and supports the economist's call that RBI is likely to deliver another rate hike in February, despite the fact that headline inflation has eased into the target range. And looking at what are the reasons behind increase in this freight prices, so truck operators, they are likely to raise the rates to keep up with the increase in the living expenses and higher debt servicing cost because of the contractionary monetary policy that has been followed. And the resilient domestic demand, it also supports the higher transport rates. And here the diesel prices are not, we can say, a factor which is causing an increase in the freight prices. So basically these are the reasons, and that's why we expect, basically the Bloomberg economists, they expect that RBI is soon going to raise the rates in the next Monetary Policy Committee meeting that is due in February 2023. Then we talk about the gig economy. So we are seeing that in the last 12 months, demand for high skilled tech talent in contractual roles, it has gone up by 85%. So in the next few years, there will be greater movement of high skilled tech talent towards the gig economy. So we require liberalization of labor laws, implementation of social security norms, along with non-monetary benefits from platforms will further enable the participation of the tech talent in the gig economy and boost employability along with economic growth. So these are certain steps which are pending as far as the gig economy is concerned. Now, again, as we just talked about the views of IMF head on global growth. So she says that we expect one third of the world economy to be in recession. And even in countries that are not in recession, it would feel like a recession for hundreds of millions of people. And the global growth is forecasted to slow from 6% in 2021 to 3.2% in 2022 and further down to 2.7% in 2023. So it is going below, we can say, less than 50% of the 6% growth that was witnessed in 2021. Then the last thing that we're talking about, although we have discussed this before, but there are certain new things, new data that are there mentioned in this article. So it is regarding the multi-constituency remote electronic voting machine, the decision that has been proposed by the Election Commission of India in order to ensure that the migrants are able to vote from the places where they reside right now and they don't have to travel to their home constituencies. So we saw that turnout in the general elections, it rose from merely like 46% in 1957 to just 67% in 2019, which means that a third of the eligible and registered voters, they still don't exercise their franchise, they still don't exercise their voting rights. So there are many reasons behind this, but internal migration is a significant factor according to Election Commission of India. So while there are several tools for inclusive voting, which includes postal ballots for services personnel, then there is home ballots for the elderly and the people with disabilities, and migrants, they have very few options. So this goes against the Election Commission of India's motto of no voter left behind, and that's why this proposal has been put forward. And looking at the data, so as per census 2011, we see that there were 453.6 million domestic migrants that were recorded in India, and even Supreme Court had ordered the remote voting for migrants under the Dr. Shamsher VP versus Union of India case. So the multi-constituency remote electronic voting machine, it is going to work in collaboration with Bharat Electronics and Electronics Corporation of India. And talking about what are the challenges to it. So firstly, we lack a universal definition of a migrant, and we need to ensure that there is balance between the inclusion of these migrants and there is no misuse of it. So enforcing the model code of conduct is another challenge. Then appointing the polling agents at the remote location is another one. Talking about how is it going to work, how the remote EVMs are going to work. So it will be a standalone non-networked system, that is, it is not connected to any internet at any point, with the same security features as we have in EVMs. And a single ballot unit can cater to multiple assembly and parliamentary constituencies at a single polling station by using a dynamic ballot unit, which will overlay the display instead of having the printed ballot sheet mounted onto the ballot unit. So it will be having a overlay display over this RVM and not a printed ballot sheet. So after verifying the identity of the voter, the presiding officer at the booth, he or she will scan the voter's constituency card, and which will have a barcode with the constituency number. So that's how, after scanning that card, the barcode, we'll get the public display of the number or the people who are contesting from a particular constituency over the screen of the RVM, and the public display control center will display the list of the candidates of that constituency, and the vote will be recorded along with the state code, constituency number, and the candidate number in the remote control unit. And then later on, the votes recorded, they will be shared with the returning officer for the home location. So that's all from Financial Express. Now we'll taking up important information from the Mint also. So in the mint, basically the topic is the economic indicators to watch in 2023. So firstly, in this picture, you can see inflation, that is CPI, and inflation of wholesale price index. Then you need to look at the bank credit growth, composite PMI, GST collections, manufacturing gross value added, current account balance. So basically the global headwinds, tightening monetary policy, and the lingering effects of COVID-19, they have combined to create a gloomy global outlook. So these are the main factors that we can say they would be responsible for the slowing down of the global economy ahead. And however, they've been supported by the domestic growth. So India is projected to be one of the world's fastest growing economies, given that it will be supported by domestic growth, which is resilient. And now we'll be dealing with the factors that we need to look out at. So firstly is, what is the current state of our economy? So in the December bulletin, the RBI said that with a balance of risk being tilted towards the darkening global outlook, so that is one of the risks to our economic growth. Second, the emerging markets, they are appearing more vulnerable. So the Indian economy needs support from the domestic growth drivers. And there are certain macroeconomic indicators such as GST collection, purchasing managers index, and seeing automobile sales going up and power consumption also going up. So these all reflect an improvement in our industrial and commercial activities. And however, geopolitical headwinds, inflation, and manufacturing output, they are things to watch out for. Then what does the data for credit deposit shows? Credit and deposits shows. So trend in the bank credit growth, it has reversed with disposals higher than the deposit mobilization. So even credit is growing and we are seeing an uptick in the capital expenditure cycle of the economy. Then how is the manufacturing sector faring and performing? So we see that the sector contributes about 17% to the GDP and it employs over 27 million people, which is crucial for job creation. So the global situation and the monetary policies, they could take their toll and weigh on the output as far as the manufacturing sector is concerned. And however, waning input cost and a revival of private capital expenditure, that could prove to be the silver lining. So there are mixed things as far as the manufacturing sector is concerned. And talking about the net exports, so because of the slowdown in the global economy, obviously that is going to impact our growth of the exports. And the last one is going to be about the inflation. So inflation, the rising inflation has prompted the global central banks to adopt tighter monetary policies. And however, in November, we see a slowdown in the headline inflation in India. But that was because of the lower food inflation, and core inflation, it remains steady at 6%. So RBI has increased the repo rate by 225 basis points, that is by 2.25% since May 2022. And with the heightened growth concerns, now it is time to rethink that its restrictive approach to monetary policy should be pursued further or not. So these were, we can say, the macroeconomic factors that we need to have a look upon. Talking about the quote of the day, so our external affairs minister says that we sincerely believe that this is not the era of war and differences must be settled on the negotiating table. It is imperative that there is a return to dialogue and diplomacy. So that's all for today. Thank you for joining Ansarkari, and you'll get the PDF link in the description box. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and share the video as much as possible.